What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Johners. So this is episode 48, and today we're going to be covering New Japan's Dominion show, which took place early hours of Sunday morning if you were watching it in the UK. But a cracking show. You're always sure to get a fantastic show from anything that New Japan produces. And today I've got a guest host with me, Matt Bayliss. Matt Bayliss has been on the podcast many times before. I think the last time we spoke to Matt, he helped us to review the Money in the Bank pay-per-view from the WWE. So welcome, Matt. Thanks for helping us out with the podcast again.
No problem at all, John. Always a pleasure to join you on this.
Excellent. We'll talk more about Dominion in a second. Just to get the plugs out of the way like we always do, as always, you can reach out to us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @withjohners_pod. Of course, we're on Instagram as well. That's instagram.com/wrestlingwithjohners. And of course, you can be part of our ever-interactive Facebook group. Go onto Facebook and search Wrestling with Johners. You can find this podcast on all popular podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, Podcast Addict, Stitcher Radio, Anchor, Castbox, YouTube. We are everywhere, so go ahead and listen to us. If you're listening to us on Apple iTunes, of course, don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating. And of course, if you enjoy listening to this podcast, please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and shout about the Wrestling with Johners podcast. This is the only podcast where you can get your weekly fix of NXT, NXT UK, WWE, Progress Wrestling, AEW, and New Japan, of course. So please spread the word, tell your friends, tell your family, and help us grow this podcast so that I can continue to produce quality content each and every week for you. So Wrestling with Johnny's is now part of the Rope Break magazine family, which will be another place where you can find and listen to this podcast. And I, for one, am very happy to be part of that wonderful and hardworking team over at Rope Break. Check out the Rope Break website. Just visit ropebreak.co.uk for all of the latest news and reviews from around the world, including a full recap from the recent New Japan Super J Cup tournament, which culminated just a few days ago. Once again, that's ropebreak.co.uk. Check it out. Right, back to you, Matt. So we don't usually cover New Japan, in fairness. We've covered plenty of NXT, plenty of WWE. We've covered Progress before as well. So this is kind of my first experience covering New Japan. I know that we covered Wrestle Kingdom at the beginning of the year, but that was Chris and Heather that helped me out with that podcast. So what was your kind of exposure to New Japan? What sort of experience have you had with New Japan over the years? Tell us a little bit about your experience of New Japan Pro Wrestling, Matt.
Limited is probably the best way of describing it. I've kind of dipped in and out and seen sort of odd matches here and there. Keep a bit of an eye on what's going on, especially sort of like with the Bullet Club over the years. Because it kind of hits sort of like more mainstream sort of wrestling media as well. But I've always been impressed with what I've seen. The style of wrestling, the presentation of the shows as well, and like a good mix of sort of like the Japanese fighters and then obviously the American and the Western influence going over there as well.
Yeah, definitely. So full disclosure, like I say, I'm not an avid New Japan fan. Same as Matt, really. We cover more of the American product or maybe the indie scene. And I know Matt has been a massive UK indie wrestling fan for many, many years, been to tons of shows. Like I say, he's helped me to cover quite a lot on Wrestling with Johners. But this is our first kind of foray into covering New Japan. Like I say, it'll be interesting to talk about wrestlers that we may not be too familiar with, but there are quite a few wrestlers certainly on this Dominion show that we were familiar with from the American wrestling scene, you could say. Why did you decide to kind of watch this show in the first place? I'm guessing that you got it on pay-per-view or either through Fight TV or maybe New Japan World. So what kind of sparked your interest to kind of watch this show in particular, and what were your expectations going into it?
It was kind of convenient. I had the opportunity to watch this one because there's been a lot of hype over the last few shows. Obviously, with your review of Wrestle Kingdom, a friend of mine went to Japan for Wrestle Kingdom as well. And you can't speak highly enough of New Japan. And it was just convenient, really, that I had the opportunity to see this one. Especially with John Moxley going over there, and I've sort of been a fan of Will Ospreay for a long time, so obviously the chance to see him And obviously a lot of hype surrounding Jericho's work with New Japan in the last sort of year or so, I think, or 18 months now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had the chance to watch as much of it as I could on Sunday morning, in amongst getting interrupted by the kids and everything else. And it's weird. It's weird watching stuff during the daytime. It's normally wait till everyone's gone to bed and then it's on. So but yeah, it was just convenient to kind of to catch this show, and I was definitely impressed.
Yeah, and whenever you watch a New Japan show or any wrestling product from the Orient, I suppose it's definitely a different feel, different vibe within the audience, and kind of a different atmosphere almost. There's still kind of the big entrances and the razzmatazz, but there's not the kind of raucous chants, or it's all very civilized, isn't it, Matt? And what you get from a New Japan audience is a very respectful audience, and they kind of see the wrestling more as a professional sport, and they kind of respect what's going on in the ring. You still got your heel and babyface dynamic, of course, but it's a different experience, isn't it? I mean, you said you had a couple of friends of yours that went to see Wrestle Kingdom in January. I don't know if they kind of fed back to you on what it was like, but kind of it is kind of a different vibe, isn't it, when you're watching it on TV or whether you're there in person compared to watching a wrestling show over in the UK or over in the States, for example. How would you sum it up?
Yeah, I think they hit the nail on the head. Really, it is viewed more as a sport rather than entertainment, and I think there's that sort of like the respectful viewing of what's going on and taking in what's happening. I actually really like it because that's how I tend to watch wrestling myself. Is that I look at the technical aspects of it, and I've over the years I've done my bit of shouting and screaming and getting involved in everything, but generally sort of like when I watch it, I'm trying to watch what's happening and how things are unraveling. So yeah, I actually quite like it, and it was the same when the Football World Cup was in Japan and South Korea. The fan reactions were really different, and sort of like when things were happening, it was silent, and then as the ball went towards the goal, they got a lot louder, and it's a lot the same with the wrestling. And so I went to see many years ago. I went to see Pro Wrestling Noah in Coventry at the Sky Dome, and that was like my first real introduction to sort of like Japanese wrestling, and it was a strange experience because I didn't know what to expect. But you on the flip side, a lot of the time you find that like crowds in WWE and sort of like in indie wrestling, they try and take over the show for their own benefit and just for cheap laughs and stuff amongst themselves. And so there's probably a happy medium somewhere where you can have a noisy crowd, but they're still paying attention and they're not just sort of like trying to do their own thing.
Yeah. But it looks like a sellout crowd in the Osaka-jo Hall in Osaka, Japan. And the opening match, and I think a lot of people that was watching this was slightly surprised to see this wrestler in the opening match, but it was Jon Moxley, probably the most talked about wrestler in the world at the moment, going up against Shota Umino. So I've got to apologise in advance. I probably will butcher one or two of these names. I'm going to try my very best. But Shota Umino is actually the son of, I think, head referee within New Japan. He's kind of commonly known as Red Shoes, and Shota Umino is one of the young lions in New Japan. So several levels below Jon Moxley's kind of name value and ability, or certainly experience level. Just to kind of rattle off a few things and I'll get your thoughts, but Moxley recently defeated Juice Robinson in Moxley's first match back after his WWE contract expired at the end of April. And of course, we all saw Jon Moxley make his shocking appearance when he showed up at AEW's inaugural pay-per-view event, Double or Nothing, a couple of weeks ago, when he attacked Jericho and Kenny Omega after that main event match to cap off a very successful Double or Nothing pay-per-view, which we reviewed a couple of weeks ago. That's in the archives. As mentioned, Moxley went up against Juice Robinson on Wednesday, the former CJ Parker, of course, for Juice's IWGP into United States title, and this was on the 5th of June, so only 4 days before Dominion, where they battled for over 20 minutes, and I mean battled. They really did beat the hell out of each other, and it was one of the matches within the Best of the Super Juniors Cup tournament final showcase on Wednesday. They battled in and out of the ring, off the staging, above the ring entrance, until Moxley defeated Robinson with his modified Dirty Deeds, which he's calling the Death Rider nowadays, to win the IWGP United States Championship. Like I say, the match went 25 minutes. So here, Jon Moxley is up against Shota Umino. And as mentioned, he's currently a young lion, so kind of one of the young boys that's kind of training and working their way up through the ranks. And like I say, Umino is on the main card here, so he's obviously one of those that's kind of making a name for himself within the kind of lower card system in New Japan. So obviously, you mentioned Jon Moxley earlier. I'm guessing you saw his shocking appearance at Double or Nothing. He beat Juice Robinson on Wednesday, Matt. He's really kind of making a big name for himself since he left WWE. He's not kind of sitting on his hands watching the world tick by. He's making the most of his freedom now, and he appears to be making a good name for himself in New Japan.
Yeah, I think it's definitely good for him to sort of like raise his profile, because there's a lot of people that will only know Dean Ambrose. They won't know Jon Moxley. So I know there's quite a few things like from CZW popping up now as well. But yeah, it'd be quite interesting to see where else he shows up. So I believe like his contract with AEW is kind of allowing him to go and work elsewhere.
Yeah.
So kind of between now and AEW TV starting later in the year. Like how many different places will Moxley turn up? It's just going to raise his profile. Get people really interested in the character, see where he's going to turn up next. And he's put on good matches so far from what we've seen. Obviously, the appearance at AEW. So yeah, I think it's good to kind of get people talking, and it's going to definitely turn a lot of fresh eyes to New Japan as well, which is only going to benefit them.
Absolutely. Well, this was a short match. I know that Umino did go on the offense and he did take the match to Moxley. The match only went about 4 minutes, and Moxley did win the match in the end with his kind of Death Rider or modified Dirty Deeds, which is the name from when he was Dean Ambrose in the WWE, of course, but the Death Rider is kind of his new finisher. Quite effective it's been so far as well, with him using it against Juice Robinson on Wednesday, here again against Umino. I don't believe the United States Championship belt was on the line here. I might be mistaken for saying that, but I don't believe it was a championship match. I know this match was announced before Moxley won the US title against Juice Robinson on Wednesday. A good little opener, nothing too special. I think afterwards, and I don't know if you saw this clip, but there was footage of Jon Moxley kind of carrying Umino, or kind of supporting and helping Umino from the ring to the backstage area where Moxley cut a promo. And he seemed to be kind of helping Umino there. So good bit of character development, I suppose. I don't know whether Moxley's meant to be a babyface or a heel quite yet. But what are your thoughts on this match? Like I say, it only went just over 4 minutes, but more of a showcase for Jon Moxley, if nothing else.
Yeah, I think he was just making the most of sort of having him available, really, and just getting that big name value at the start of the show to get people in the mood, and obviously getting people to sign up and buy the pay-per-view as well. Yeah,
and after the match, before he went backstage, Jon Moxley did grab a microphone from the ringside area, and he officially announced himself as being part of the G1 Climax tournament, which would take place throughout the summer. It sounds like he's kind of fully invested into whatever New Japan can throw at him. Certainly these few months before the TNT TV deal kicks in with AEW in October, where I think he'll be more tied, as you mentioned earlier, more tied to the AEW contract. But in the meantime, he can kind of wrestle around a little bit, and he certainly seems to be making a name for himself in New Japan. So quite a busy week for Jon Moxley there, winning the IWGP US Championship, and here being in the opening match at Dominion. So there we go. I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about Jon Moxley as the weeks and months progress. The next match was Shingo Takagi, I think that's how you pronounce it, versus Satoshi Kujami. So I don't know if you've got these names written down in front of you, Matt, but I'm going to say Shingo and Kujami. That's who we've got here in this second match. Now, Shinjo actually lost the final of the Best of the Super Juniors Cup tournament against Will Ospreay on Wednesday. So that was a hell of a match. That was being described as a match of the year contender, an epic match to kind of finish off that tournament final. And of course, we all know that Will Ospreay won the Best of the Super Junior tournament, and that's the second time that he's won it. I think he won it for the first time in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, and the second time this past week. This match was another good match. Went about 11 minutes overall. It was a good, fast-paced, hard-hitting match. What are your kind of thoughts on this? I mean, before I kind of ask you about your thoughts, I just want to mention that Satoshi Kujami is kind of more of a senior established wrestler within New Japan. And in fact, as a singles wrestler, he's the first wrestler to hold the New Japan IWGP Heavyweight Championship and All Japan Pro Wrestling Triple Crown simultaneously, which is something that not many wrestlers out there, are able to say about their achievements. And he's also... so he's kind of quite an established wrestler. I think he's in his late 40s now. I've checked him up earlier on. I think he's about 48 years old, so a very senior wrestler. But good opportunity for Shinjo to wrestle a heavyweight wrestler within New Japan. And of course, Shinjo is more familiar with the junior division, of course, with his successes in the Super J Cup, reaching the final against Will Ospreay, as I've already mentioned. Now, at the end of the match, I know that Shinjo said that he also wants to be part of the G1 climax. So Shinjo will be entering himself into more of a heavyweight contest this summer. So that's your second entrant in the G1. But what were your thoughts on this match? Kind of a typical junior lightweight wrestler in Shinjo up against Kujami, kind of your more established veteran. What did you think of this one, Matt?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I like about sort of New Japan is that where they do have the weight classes, but then people can kind of compete outside of their own weight class. So it does make for some interesting matches, and there's a lot of respect for sort of like the older wrestlers. Yeah. Obviously, not talking about other older wrestlers that wrestle this weekend. Generally in New Japan, they tend to be able to work pretty well still. And you do get the contrast in styles as well, and sort of like the crowd are invested because it's someone that they know well and they've seen over the years. So, respect comes into it a lot more. Yeah, definitely. Moving on to the next match, and this was a tag match. Jushin Thunder Liger and Yoshihashi versus Minoru Suzuki and Zack Sabre Jr. So some more familiar names in this tag match. I'm not going to go through blow by blow what happened, but Jushin Thunder Liger and Yoshihashi actually won the match. They defeated Suzuki and Zack Sabre Jr. when Yoshihashi did like a bit of a roll-up, really cradled Zack Sabre Jr. to win the match for his team. Just kind of on the 10-minute mark, and it was a good match, as you would expect from these four individuals. I've got a lot of time for all four individuals in this match. Massive respect for Jushin Thunder Liger. I think he's been in the business for well over 30 years now, and he doesn't seem, I know that he wrestles under a costume, but he's still as agile as he was 30 years ago. Minoru Suzuki, we know that he's a kind of a tough son of a gun, and he can certainly take and dish out a good beating. Zack Sabre Jr., if not the best, one of the best technical wrestlers in the whole world, but with Yoshihashi pinning Zack Sabre Jr. in this match, it does actually potentially set up Zack Sabre Jr., Yoshihashi for a title match against Zack Sabre Jr., because Zack Sabre Jr. is the Rev Pro British heavyweight champion, of course, and looks like that's possibly going to develop their rivalry with a possible title shot for Yoshihashi somewhere down the line. But what were your kind of thoughts on this tag match? A bit more familiar with some of the names in this match. Matt's a little bit easier to talk about, but give us your thoughts on this one. Yeah, I totally agree with with the the four guys in this match. They're all tons of respect for all of them. Zack Sabre Jr. is absolutely phenomenal. I've seen him a lot over the years, and from he can kind of do the hard hitting and really really technical as well. So he's definitely someone that I look out for and look forward to seeing whenever I get the chance. But a good tag match with four sort of well-known names, very some contrasting styles as well, but it all comes together really well. And I agree with you that maybe pushing forward for a Rev Pro title shot in the future.
Yeah, and Zack Sabre Jr., like I say, he's really established himself with the Japanese crowd and with New Japan in particular. Seems to be kind of a mainstay on a lot of their big shows now. I think he wrestles just as many shows in Japan as he does anywhere else in the world. And I think that he's respected for his technical style and his ability. But I think he's described as like the Harry Potter of the wrestling world, because he can put any move on you and he can kind of escape from pretty much any move as well. Fantastic tag match. The next match was a 6-man tag, and it involved Hiroshi Tanahashi, Juice Robinson, and Ryosuke Taguchi versus the Bullet Club, I should say, which featured Jay White, Chase Owens, and Taiji Ishimori. So lots of action in this match. Juice Robinson still kind of got a bruised eye and a kind of bloodshot eye from his encounter with Jon Moxley earlier on in the week, like I say, for when he lost his United States Championship. You've got Chase Owens, who is, I think he's a Canadian wrestler, but certainly building a name for himself on the Japanese scene. Jay White, of course, former IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, lost his championship to Kasuska Okada at MSG over WrestleMania weekend in New York in April, of course. So lots of really good action from 6 fantastic wrestlers. Now, the end of the match happened where Tanahashi he got the pin over Chase Owens, I believe, and from his final cut maneuver. Now, I must admit that this was a good match, not a brilliant match. There were quite a few spots that didn't quite seem to connect. I know that Tanahashi, I think he tried his finisher kind of a few seconds before the end of the match, and it kind of botched a little bit. I think that even the kind of the final cut that won the match wasn't executed brilliantly. I know that Tanahashi appeared to be suffering with a bit of an arm injury throughout the match. What are your thoughts on this one? Kind of once again, New Japan appear to love their multi-man tag matches. This was a match with lots of name value, lots of excellent wrestlers. Of course, you got former champions as well in Juice Robinson and Jay White and Tanahashi. So some excellent name value in this match. What's your take on this one, Matt? It went about 10 minutes from beginning to end.
Yeah, I think it happens quite a lot when you have multi-man matches, especially with sort of like fairly big names, that they don't always come off that well because everyone's trying to sort of get their stuff in basically. And I agree. It was a little bit scrappy in places, and I think sort of like with its position in the card as well, especially coming after the tag match that preceded it as well. I think it was just a bit of a fairly quick match just to get some name value, really.
Yeah. Well, I want to move on to the next match because I really, really enjoyed this next match, which was Tomohiro Ishii versus Tachai. I've got him down as, and this is for the Never Openweight Championship. So Tomohiro Ishii representing Chaos. But just to go through some of the key spots here. So Ishii starts the match by laying on the mat, almost inviting the champion Tachi to get his first shots in. This match soon progressed into a chop and a kick fest with Tachi flooring Ishii with a big kick to the chest before landing some driving kicks to the chest of Ishii in the corner. So this was really super strong style kicking and a very, very kind of hard hitting match from minute 1, basically. Tachi gets a very close near fall with a high angled suplex, like I say, A2 suplex. Ishii responds with a high-angle suplex of his own, with both men kind of on the mat within the first minutes, holding on to their necks from these wicked high-angled suplexes. Ishii recovers to hit a German suplex before pulling the referee into a kind of a run-in tachi, which Ishii takes full advantage of with a solid headbutt, getting a 2 count for his troubles. Tachi gets another close near fall from a gator clutch pinning attempt on what should have been a 3 count, but I'm sure the referee held off for dramatic effect on some of these counts. I'm sure he would have got a 4 and a 5 with some of these away, kind of held off from 2 to 3, but that was only a 2 count on this occasion. Tachi gets a version of a dragon sleeper on his opponent before the referee was checking on Ishii, but manages to kind of get his way out of the hold. Tachi manages to hoist the rather solid Ishii into a last ride powerbomb, putting his whole body weight onto Ishii, only getting a close near fall from his attempt. This was a really, really fun match, really, really hard-hitting match as well between two very solid, stiff wrestlers. The end finally came with Ishii nailing Tachi with a brutal, delayed vertical brainbuster, and got the pinfall, got the 1-2-3, and it is now the 5-time IWGP Never Openweight champion. So this was a really enjoyable, stiff match, and it's a match that had me shouting at the TV due to some of the false finishes and the referee delaying the 3 counts, and lots of close near falls, lots of drama in this one. But like I said, I just love these two big balls kind of going at it and really knocking the stuffing out of one another. But this match went 16 minutes. We've got a new Never Openweight champion with Ishii winning the crown for the 5th time. Matt, I'd love to know your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I know JR's not over there anymore, but it's sort of like defines like the slobber knocker phrase, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
This is where it really started to pick up. Really, like a well-paced match. It was really hard hitting, and like I say, with the sort of like the false finishes, the near falls, and everything. This is where you find yourself invested in it, and you are on the edge of your seat waiting to see what happens, and and New Japan's not as predictable as WWE can be.
Yeah.
So a lot of time when you suspect that it is the end of the match, it's not. You're about 5-6 minutes away normally. But yeah, it was really, really, really solid match.
Yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed that, and like you say, that was the match that kind of got me more invested in the show, and I was literally shouting at the TV during 1 or 2 spots with some of the action and some of the close near falls and false finishes. But really, really loved that match. The next match, it's for the IWGP Tag Team Championships. You've got Evil and Sonata, and they're the challengers to the Gorillas of Destiny, and that's Tanga Loa and Tama Tonga. So the Gorillas of Destiny are 5-time IWGP Tag Team Champions, as well as being the current Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions, which they won at the G1 Supercard at MSG over WrestleMania weekend. Jado, who accompanied the Gorillas of Destiny down to the ring, and he had a kendo stick in hand, so no doubt he was going to kind of interfere in the match later on down the line. We'll talk more about Jado a bit later on. Let's see. Sonata puts Tanga Loa into a paradise lock before, which essentially where he tied his opponent up into a ball, basically, where he couldn't move before he kind of came running across the ring to kick him up the backside, which did eventually free Tanga Loa from the paradise lock. I thought that was quite amusing. Tanga Loa gets a 2 count from a sit-out powerbomb. Sonata nails a picture-perfect missile dropkick onto Tanga Loa before Evil executes a brilliant superplex, followed by a moonsault from Sonata, with Tanga Loa finding himself in a Scorpion Deathlock. So lots of quick moves and transition and fast-paced action here. The match soon picks up again with Evil and Sonata going to work on Tanga Loa. Evil and Sonata apply dueling submission holds on Tanga Loa and Tama Tonga until Jado pulls the referee out of the ring, allowing Jado to enter the ring, cane in hand, before striking Evil. Jado goes for a second strike of the cane, only to be stopped by Bushi, who comes from out of the crowd, comes from out of nowhere. He sprays some toxic mist into the face of Jado, causing the end of Jado's role in this match. Then from out of nowhere, Tama Tonga rolls up Evil from behind, pulling on the tights for extra leverage, which the referee doesn't see, and he counts to 1, 2, 3, and the Gorillas of Destiny retain their IWGP Tag Team Championships. So the match went 16 minutes 45 seconds. This was a really good match. Definitely picked up when Evil and Sonata were in there together performing their double team moves on the Gorillas of Destiny, but Evil and Sonata were not able to hit their magic killer finisher on Tama Tonga and failed to win the IWGP Tag Team titles on this occasion. So what were your thoughts on this match? Like you say, from the previous match, things really started to pick up, and this one didn't disappoint. So I've thoroughly enjoyed this tag match, Matt.
Yeah, it was really, really good match. You had a bit of everything. You had the sort of the traditional hard hitting, but like you said, the double team stuff was really good.
Yeah.
And then it's adding in stuff like with the Paradise Lock and the Toxic Mist and stuff like that. You don't see as much of that really in sort of like Western wrestling now. With when you used to have Tajiri with his green mist and everything, and Mr. Fuji with his white powder.
Yes.
I think Legend Christian always referred to it as racist powder on. But yeah, it had a bit around. I think the finish was a little bit cheap. But I don't know the storyline all that well behind the match, so but maybe it opens up to having a rematch and to sort of like doing it all again at a later date. So but it was thoroughly enjoyable. Again, sort of with like the outside influence and everything, it had a bit for everyone. And like totally agree with you that sort of like with the preceding match and this one, you can kind of feel that business is picking up at this point.
Definitely, it certainly will with the next match when we get round to that. But between just after this tag title match, we had a special appearance from Shibata, who points and signals to the stage. Now, we thought that he was kind of signalling the entrance of Dragon Lee to start off with, who has a close association with Shibata. But then we see a very popular figure, Kenta, formerly Hideo Itami from NXT, of course, with a kind of a takeover shirt or a shirt saying takeover on it in yellow writing. Now, a lot of people were kind of probably reading a lot into this, but it's actually one of Shibata's t-shirts. And now he has the t-shirt and the moniker kind of takeover. And to give you a little bit more context to this, I know that Kenta and Shibata used to be in a tag team back in Pro Wrestling Noah, and their tag team used to be called the Takeover. So I think it was more to do with Shibata, but it was just kind of good timing, I suppose, knowing that Kenta or Hideo Itami didn't have the best of times working for WWE or NXT. A lot was down to the multiple injuries that Itami faced when he was over there. And so Shibata introduces Kenta, of course, and Kenta says that he wants to come out here to tell you how he really feels. There's a big promo in Japanese, and then at the very end, he announces himself for the G1 Climax tournament as well. So this is the third person that have announced themselves for the G1 Climax. Now, to the best of my knowledge, and I don't know whether you know any different here, Matt, but Kenta has never wrestled for New Japan before. He was always a Pro Wrestling Noah guy over in Japan before he went over to the States. Did a lot of work for Ring of Honor, of course, but I don't think he was ever a New Japan guy. So this is kind of fairly new ground, new territory for Kenta. But definitely got a good reaction on the night, and especially with his association with Shibata, who is kind of a bit of a legend in Japan and a legend in New Japan especially. But he got a great reaction. Like I say, his T-shirt seems to be a big talking point, but I think above and beyond that seems to be himself entering into the G1 Climax tournament later on in the summer. What was your take on this little segment?
Yeah, it's really good. It was always a shame, really, with Itami in NXT that he never really got to show off what he couldn't do. He went there as, I think, didn't he sign the same time as Finn Balor, I believe?
Yeah, around the same time as Kevin Owens and Finn Balor, and I think all that group kind of went in roughly at the same time. Yeah,
and then with because of injuries and everything, sort of like held him back, and and he never really had the chance to shine. Whereas he is a phenomenal talent. I met him about 8 years ago at a Pro Wrestling Noah show. A nice picture of him holding my son, who's called Noah, which was pretty well with all the wrestlers there when we sort of turn up to the meet and greet, just passing the baby around. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in New Japan and in the G1 as well. So again, it's another big name. It's not a Western name coming over, but it's got a similar sort of feel, like him turning up as someone like Moxley turning up.
Yeah, and I think with Kenta, I don't think we ever really saw the best of Kenta when he was over in the States, or certainly with NXT or WWE. He was kind of like Kenta, just with kind of half the gears, really. He never really hit the heights of kind of the legend of Kenta coming over from Pro Wrestling Noah and what we're familiar with seeing from him. And he had some tremendous matches over in the States, especially against Bryan Danielson, of course. But Kenta was renowned for being very, very hard hitting with tremendous kicks, not necessarily being stiff, but just being very, very kind of strong style and kind of a really hard-hitting Japanese style, and we never really saw the best of him over in the States. So maybe now that he's over in New Japan and he's likely he's going to be part of the G1, we'll hopefully get to see some of the old Kenta that you probably saw 8 years ago, and that some of us are more familiar with from his run in Ring of Honor or Pro Wrestling Noah. But really good to see him there. Like I say, you got a fantastic reaction, and it'd be good to see if we can see the old Kenta in the G1. Now, this is the match that just about everybody's been raving about, Matt. Will Ospreay and versus Dragon Lee for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship, with Dragon Lee going into the match as the champion. Will Ospreay on a high from having won the Best of the Super Juniors Cup just 4 days earlier. And we mentioned that he had that kind of match of the year contender against Shinjo in the final on Wednesday. But just to go through some of the key spots here, and then we'll talk more about this match and Will Ospreay afterwards. But Will Ospreay, off the back of a really, really hot Best of the Super Juniors tournament. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this show, this was his second Best of the Super Junior tournament win. The match starts with a kind of a delayed drop kick in the corner from Dragon Lee onto Ospreay. Ospreay performs a Sasuke special over the top rope, which Dragon Lee avoids before sitting Ospreay onto the guardrail. Now, this was one of the moves of the night where Dragon Lee kind of launches himself from the other side of the ring and dives through the ropes, nailing Ospreay, who's, remember, sat on the guardrail, sending Ospreay crashing over the announcers table and into the first row, where it looks pretty rough, to be honest with you. And it looked like Ospreay and Dragon Lee had a pretty rough landing the other side of that guardrail, with Ospreay possibly hitting his head. Fortunately, he was okay off the back of that move, but that was one hell of a spot. And Dragon Lee gets a close near fall once back inside the ring with a straitjacket suplex. Both men are on the top turnbuckle when Ospreay nails Dragon Lee with a double foot stomp to the face, sending Lee to the outside, where Ospreay hits a picture-perfect corkscrew moonsault to the floor. After a number of reversals between these two, Dragon Lee nails a DDT, which really appears to rock Will Ospreay. That one definitely seemed to kind of do a bit of a number on Ospreay. Ospreay recovers, though, and he hits Dragon Lee with a pump kick to the face. Ospreay is then nailed with a reverse Rana. Ospreay then executes a Spanish fly for a 2 count. So back and forth action, and lots of really, really cool high spots between these two, as you would expect. This match is going 100 miles per hour. Ospreay then lands on his feet from an attempted Dragon Rana from the top turnbuckle to the floor on the outside, which was absolutely awesome. He just pitched that landing perfectly. Ospreay then gets a close near fall from a shooting star press. Will Ospreay hits a Robinson special. Ospreay then gets caught in the Tree of Woe on the outside of the ropes. Normally it's kind of dangling inside the ring, but he was dangling on the outside before Dragon Lee manages to hit a double foot stomp to the chest of Ospreay, with Ospreay just managing to beat the referee's 20 count to get back into the ring to continue the match. Dragon Lee hits a destroyer and a running knee for another very close near fall. Ospreay brings an end to this match, and into this amazing match with a top rope springboard cutter, followed by his Stormbreaker finisher for the 1-2-3 to regain the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship for the third time. Wow, I mean, he had a 5-star classic earlier on in the week at the Best of the Super Juniors. This was just as good a match, to be honest with you, between these two. And that was an outstanding match. Went 20 minutes. That suicide dive from Lee onto Ospreay on the outside, sending Ospreay over the guard railing, was awesome. The double foot stomp from Dragon Lee looked as dangerous as hell. So many high spots in this match. I think the usually reserved Japanese fans really got into this one. Matt, I'd love to know your thoughts.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. It was breathless the whole way through, from start to finish. Some phenomenal spots. The dive through the ropes to Ospreay on the guardrail. I was, when they were setting up, I thought he'll hop off the guardrail and stop him or something, and then he ended up plowing straight through him. It was, it was brutal. So that definitely had me out of my seat watching that. But it was just like frenetic the whole way through. It's fast and furious the whole time. Really good ebb and flow, like the momentum shifting between both guys. Incredibly hard hitting. We saw mentioned earlier about all the false finishes in the other match, and it was the same in this one. That every time we thought, oh, that's got to be it, it's going to be over, and it wasn't. I think it wasn't just all flips and high spots as well. They told a really good story throughout the match. And just like really thoroughly invested in it.
Yeah, and we spoke offline. We spoke before we started recording this evening about Will Ospreay and how over the last couple of years he's really kind of stepped it up as far as maturity in the ring and just being a more complete package. He's selling and his kind of facials, his body language. The moves obviously are absolutely fantastic, but I think he is becoming a much more of a mature and more of a complete wrestler, more of an all-rounder, and one to be taken a lot more seriously. I know that he did a promo after his Best of the Super Junior Cup win on Wednesday, saying that he's ready to take on the challenge of carrying New Japan for the future. They've lost Kenny, they've lost the Young Bucks, and he's, prepared to take on that mantle of being the number one guy if New Japan need him to. But I could certainly see, with the way that he's developed and, like I say, that maturity that's really come into his game, potentially, we could be looking at Will Ospreay not just as a junior heavyweight champion, but possibly a contender in the next year or so as an IWGP heavyweight contender. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think he's definitely well respected in Japan. He's really adapted and embraced the lifestyle and the culture as well. So you can see that with his entrance and he's what he wears coming to the ring, and I think he's definitely over with the crowd there. And there's no stopping him really. He's got the ability to do it. He's in the last year or so he's definitely bulked up as well, so he's not just this skinny guy doing flips, and he seems relatively down to earth as well. So hopefully he's got a bright future in Japan, and then who knows beyond that. Yeah,
I know that New Japan went through their whole phase, and they obviously thought a lot of Jay White, and Jay White was their IWGP heavyweight champion. Some might say they took the belt off of Jay White too soon, giving it back to Okada over WrestleMania weekend. But maybe, there's some people that say that maybe Jay White wasn't quite ready. Maybe it was a bit too soon for him, although, to their credit, they were trying to build a new star, and that's what they were able to do with Jay White. But I think with Will Ospreay, I think that he comes across more as a credible wrestler to take seriously. He's got the moves, he's got the look, like you say, he's bulked up. I think his selling has got a lot better. I think he's much more of a complete wrestler than Jay White. So I wouldn't be surprised if they possibly got one eye on him as a future title contender to, I'd love to see Will Ospreay against Okada. You never know. And if Will Ospreay enters into the G1 and potentially wins that, we might be seeing Will Ospreay versus Okada at Wrestle Kingdom 2020. But that would be an awesome match. So moving on anyway. Like I say, I think we've hyped up Will Ospreay enough there. We're all very looking forward to a very bright future for him. But the semi-final match of Dominion is Kota Ibushi versus Tatsushi Naito for the IWGP Intercontinental Championship. So Ibushi starts off the match with a very stiff kick to the chest of Naito, flooring the challenger to the canvas. Naito gets his own back with a running drop kick to the back of Ibushi. It's strange to see Naito as the heel here. I don't know if it's just me, but I've always got the impression of Naito as more of a babyface. But maybe I've got that wrong. Ibushi lands a corkscrew plancher onto Naito on the outside. Naito drops Ibushi off the side of the ring apron with a brutal German suplex, with Ibushi hitting his head on the edge of the ring apron before landing hard on the floor on the outside, and that did look brutal. And to be honest with you, I believe it was definitely a botched spot where I think the move was meant to kind of land fully on the ring apron, but it was just his kind of head that connected awkwardly to the edge of the ring apron there. Then Ibushi nails Naito with a reverse Rana from the top turnbuckle before Naito hits Ibushi with a package tombstone. The match progresses into a bit of a slugfest between these two before Naito goes for a series of headbutts before Ibushi drops Naito with a wicked 360 lariat. Ibushi misses a Kinshasa, allowing Naito to hit his Destino for a close near fall. Ibushi gets another dramatic close near fall from a last ride powerbomb. Naito then counters Ibushi into a brutal DDT. This match is fast and furious as Naito gets the win from a swinging reverse DDT from the second turnbuckle. And he nearly gets the win there. That was a close near fall. However, the end of the match comes when Naito eventually nails a perfect Destino to win his fourth Intercontinental Championship. Now, that was a really tough match to watch. So many so much stiff action. So many head bumps as well for Ibushi. Now, I know that this guy doesn't care, and I've seen so many Ibushi matches where he's happy to kind of land on his head, but there's only so many bumps to the noggin that you can take. The match went 22 minutes, and so Naito wins the Intercontinental Championship. He's the fourth time winner of that bout, the kind of closing scene to this match is a picture of Naito standing with his foot on Kota Ibushi's head with the championship raised in the air to the displeasure of the fans before Ibushi gets tended to on the outside. So, like I say, things just seem to be ramping up. This was a brutal match, some really tough spots to watch. What are your thoughts on Ibushi versus Naito?
Yeah, again, another fantastic match. I mean, Ibushi's definitely got a screw loose or 7, I think.
Yeah.
But I mean, so I think, there was some like genuine concern after the sort of German on the ring apron, and he did look like he'd scrambled his head a bit. But then the very next thing, as soon as he gets back in the ring, is he gets hit with the Rana right straight onto the top of his head again, and then there's still 10 minutes to go in the match. It's just absolutely insane. It was. At one point, for a few minutes after that, you just think I'll just literally put him out of his misery at this point. But the match went on, and it was a really good match. And thankfully, he apparently hasn't been genuinely hurt by it. But I'd imagine he was feeling that the next day.
Oh, no doubt. But and then we're on to our main event, and it's Kasuska Okada versus Chris Jericho, and this is for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. So this was billed as the Rainmaker versus the Painmaker. Jericho comes to the ring with his clockwork orange makeup on. We've seen Jericho in New Japan against the likes of Kenny Omega and Naito, and now against Okada here for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. So the commentators remind us that this is the only championship that has eluded Jericho. I'm sure it's probably not the only title that's eluded Jericho. I know that Jericho won pretty much all there was to win in WWE, but they even mentioned Jericho's 6 WWE Championship reigns. and the one night where Jericho became the WWE Undisputed Champion, where he beat The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin all in the same night to be the Undisputed World Champion. Chris Jericho will be facing Hangman Page on the 31st of August at All Out. That's AEW's next pay-per-view, and that's going to be to see who's going to be the first ever AEW World Champion. And we all saw his amazing match against Kenny Omega at Double or Nothing, of course. And as we all know, Kenny Omega is one of Okada's greatest rivals, with their near 2-year feud culminating with Omega finally winning the IWGP title from Okada. This match, however, soon goes to the outside, as most of Jericho's matches tend to nowadays, where he DDTs Okada onto the ring announcer's table whilst throwing chairs around like a madman at ringside. Jericho sets up another table on the outside. I'm sure this will come into play quite possibly a bit later on. His attempted power bomb on Okada is blocked before Jericho runs Okada into the guard railings instead. Back inside the ring, Jericho hits a crossbody block from the top turnbuckle, followed by a back suplex and a drop kick. The match soon goes back out to the outside, where Okada kicks Jericho over into the front row. Okada goes for a dive over the railings, only for Jericho to nail Okada with a code breaker. So that was a pretty cool spot. Back inside the ring, Jericho slaps on the walls of Jericho before Okada gets to the bottom rope for a rope break there. Okada hits a tombstone pile driver on Jericho, but Jericho pops straight up to nail a powerbomb. This match is very back and forth, with both men starting to show signs of fatigue. Jericho removes the turnbuckle pad, which he throws onto the commentary team, before going to throw Okada into the turnbuckles, which Okada fights his way out of. Okada hits Jericho with a tombstone, but is unable to connect with his Rainmaker clothesline. Instead, Jericho puts on a kind of a high-angled lion tamer. Jericho finally runs Okada into the exposed turnbuckle before going for the Judas effect back elbow, which Okada manages to avoid. Okada eventually manages to roll up Chris Jericho for the pinfall victory and to retain his IWGP Championship after 23 minutes. So we've seen some awesome matches in this show, Matt. This one was not the best match on the card. I think we both agree with that. But I think when you take into consideration Chris Jericho, his style has had to kind of change over the years. He's no longer, the lion tamer from 20, 25 years ago. He's no longer the WWF World Champion from 20 years ago or 18 years ago. I think he's 48 years old now. He's had to adapt his style. He's got the new Judas effect back elbow, which he wasn't able to use on this occasion. But I think for what it was a great match. It wasn't the typical Kenny Omega versus Okada match that we've seen over the years. A different style of main event. And I think you've got Chris Jericho that is an out-and-out heel. And I think his wrestling style certainly complements his character. But I'd love to know your thoughts on this main event with Okada retaining his championship.
Yeah, I think as a wrestling match, it wasn't great. As a brawl or as a fight, it was really enjoyable. So the one thing Jericho still does really well is he plays the crowd, and the way he moves around the ring is always something that I've really admired with him. And sort of he knows when to go fast, when to go slow. There was a bit sort of early in the match where he went to the outside and the card started to chase him. So he's kind of just gone to a bit of a trot around, and I think the crowd kind of popped that because of the way he was running. And I think there's a lot more to it than the actual his in-ring ability now.
Yeah.
I think so. One of the things I mentioned someone about, one of my highlights was just Jericho just throwing chairs everywhere. I think he hit at least 2 cameramen. He was either doing it deliberately or he was just being so flippant with chucking chairs everywhere. It's just I think he's having fun being a heel and just trying to just flipping people off all the time. I think there was someone posted a video earlier where the bit where he takes the cover from the turnbuckles off and throws it on the comedy desk, and you just hear this thud as it hits them because obviously the microphones pick it up. So I love Jericho. I think he's quality. I think he is showing his age now. but he's still got so much to offer. He's always been one to put over people, up and coming wrestlers as well. And I think he just works as that dastardly heel now, and he's not really interested in having a wrestling match as such.
Yeah.
And it works. I know it was for the main title, but it probably shouldn't have been the main event, especially if you look at definitely the two matches that came immediately before it as well. But it was still enjoyable and a fun way to round off the event, really.
Yeah, and then directly after the match, Jericho goes nuts, hitting Okada with a steel chair to the face twice. Jericho drags the champ to the outside, running Okada into the steel. He puts a steel chair over his head and then runs into the steel ring post. Jericho then goes to powerbomb Okada onto the table that was set up previously on the outside when Hiroshi Tanahashi, who is on commentary for this main event, comes to Okada's aid, sending Jericho running for cover into the front row. Jericho grabs a microphone. He calls Tanahashi out. He calls the fans out. He calls Tanahashi a bitch. And he's calling Japan a bullshit country. So then Jericho grabs some Okada dollars, which he kind of sticks to his head, and then puts down his tights, and healing it up all the way to the back. Kind of a fun ending to a really, really fun show. And Tanahashi looks after his friend Okada, takes him to the back. But as an overall show, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think there were quite a few highlights on the show. Definitely the Will Ospreay match for the Junior Heavyweight Championship. Absolutely loved Dragon Lee versus Will Ospreay. Loved the match between Naito and Ibushi, which was a really kind of hard-hitting match, and Ibushi needs to start wearing a crash helmet to the ring because he's just getting pummeled left, right and centre, and doesn't seem to be afraid for his own safety. Too many highlights to mention, but I think that this match was something that Will Ospreay fans can look back on with pride and to say, yep, he's definitely kind of, he's putting his name out there. He's definitely kind of becoming the full package now, the total package and the real deal. So I think this is definitely a bit of a crowning moment for Will Ospreay, especially with his Best of the Super Junior Cup win from a few days earlier. What are your kind of thoughts on Dominion 2019 overall, Matt?
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's just sort of like the first time I've watched practically a whole New Japan show sort of live. I was really impressed, and we'll certainly be trying to catch some more going forward, and just trying to keep up to speed with it. And it was thoroughly entertaining. A lot of new names, a lot of different people to look out for as well.
Definitely. And now that we've mastered the kind of Japanese names now, we can do this all the time. I think that we've nailed one or two of them names, or possibly not. But I've certainly had fun reviewing this Dominion show with you, Matt. So thank you very much. If any of my listeners out there want to kind of get in touch with you on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, have you got any social media handles that you want to throw out there?
I would if I knew them, but they got set up ages ago and I can never remember what they are. The best thing to do is go on the Wrestling with Johners podcast Facebook page, and I'm normally on there, especially on a Tuesday morning with the latest Funhouse videos from Monday Night Raw. Yeah. So feel free to throw abuse at me or add me as a friend or whatever you want to do from there.
Cool. There we go. But thank you, Matt. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on board as always, and hopefully we'll get you on another podcast very, very soon. But that's it for another episode. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if you did, as always, please don't forget to hit like, subscribe, share, and shout about this podcast. Tell your friends and tell your family, and keep listening to the Wrestling with Johners podcast for your weekly NXT UK, NXT WWE, AEW, and you could say New Japan updates on a weekly basis. Without you sharing and subscribing to this podcast, we can't grow and we can't improve. So hit that like and subscribe button now. We'll be back again this coming Thursday with another rundown of NXT and NXT UK. And I think on this coming week's NXT UK, we've got that epic 6-man tag match involving British Strong Style versus Imperium. That's Walter, Marcel Bartel and Fabian Eichner. So that's going to be a fantastic match and a really good episode of NXT UK. And we'll be covering it all here on Wrestling with Johners, plus all the top news and opinions from this beautiful world of professional wrestling that we love. But in the meantime, from myself and from Matt, thank you very much. Take care and speak to you all soon.